Marcus Ellison was 39 years old, and for 11 years he had been the man Donna Ellison introduced at parties as her husband the handyman. Not a contractor, not a builder, the handyman. He drove a 2016 F-150 with a cracked side mirror he had not yet bothered to fix. He wore Carhartt on weekdays and pressed slacks on Sundays when they went to her mother's house for dinner, and her mother always looked at him with the particular patience of a woman who believed her daughter could have done better. He kept his work invoices in a manila folder on the kitchen counter. He paid the mortgage in cash equivalent transfers every first of the month and never mentioned it. What Donna never asked, not once in 11 years, was why a handyman's invoice folder was always thin while their refrigerator was always full, or why his one personal bank account, the one she had never been added to, sat in a different institution from the joint account she checked regularly. He had built the deck they stood on during summer evenings, board by board with his own hands. He had laid the tile in the master bath. He had renovated the kitchen from studs to backsplash over one winter while she stayed at her sister's in Raleigh. The house was his in ways she had no legal language for, and in one way she had never thought to look into. It was his in the only way that actually mattered. On the Thursday morning, she decided, she was done. Donna Ellison dragged 3 of his duffel bags onto the balcony of their third-floor Charlotte townhouse and threw them over the railing one at a time. His tools followed. Then his boots. Then a framed photograph of his grandmother he had kept on the nightstand since 1997. She watched them fall and did not go back inside. 2 hours later, 6 black SUVs pulled into the parking lot of the Brentwood Commons townhome complex on Callaway Park Drive. They did not rush. They did not need to. What happened next would cost Donna Ellison everything she thought was already hers. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The morning light came through the east-facing windows of his brother's garage apartment in thin, flat bands. The kind of light that did not ask anything of you. And Marcus Ellison sat on the edge of a folding cot at 5:47 a.m. with a cup of coffee cradled in both hands, and thought about a thing his grandmother used to say. She had told him once, on the porch of her house in Gastonia on a Sunday afternoon when he was 11 years old and furious about something small he could no longer remember. The foundation is never the flashy part. But you pull it out, and everything above it falls. He had been thinking about foundations his entire adult life. Marcus had gone into construction at 22, not because he had no other options, but because he understood, in the particular way some men understand things before they can articulate them, that the physical world required honesty in a way that very little else did. A beam either held or it didn't. A joint either fit or it didn't. You could not charm a load-bearing wall. You could not network your way past a slab that wasn't level. He had started as a framing carpenter on residential sites in the greater Charlotte metro. By 27, he was running crews. By 31, he had taken a contractor's license exam that he passed on the first attempt. A fact he mentioned to no one at the time because the people around him had no frame of reference for what it meant. By 34, he had co-founded a construction and development LLC with a man named Gerald Okafor, a civil engineer from Accra who had emigrated at 19 and possessed a specific disdain for inefficiency that Marcus found deeply attractive as a business philosophy. Ellison Okafor Development LLC was not a handyman service, but that was a detail Marcus had never seen a reason to share with his wife. He had met Donna at a fundraiser for the Charlotte Urban League in the spring of his 31st year. She had been wearing a green dress and standing near the bar with 3 women who all talked loudly, and she had been the quiet one. The one slightly turned away from the group, holding her wine glass at her hip, and looking at the room the way someone looks at something they're deciding whether to buy. He had found that quality interesting. He had approached. They had talked for 2 hours about nothing particularly important, and he had left with her number and a sense, the way you sometimes get a sense, that something had just shifted. He told Gerald about her 3 weeks later. Gerald had listened with the same attentiveness he brought to site plans, asked 2 questions, and said, "Prenup, Marcus?" He had laughed. Gerald had not laughed back. They had been married 18 months later in a small ceremony in Gastonia, 34 guests. His grandmother in the front row in a lavender hat. His grandmother had been gone 4 years now. It was not her photograph lying in a parking lot in the morning drizzle that made Marcus Ellison put down his coffee cup, set it carefully on the milk crate beside the cot, and reach for his phone with the steadiness of a man who has already decided what the next step is. It was the second notification on the screen, the one from the app he had installed on the internal network of the home he owned, the one connected to the doorbell camera and the 2 discrete interior sensors his brother-in-law had helped him configure during Donna's trip to Atlanta 8 months ago. The motion log showed the master bedroom. 11:48 p.m. The previous night. The timestamp was 41 minutes after Donna had texted Marcus to say she was tired and going to sleep early and not to call. He opened the log. He set down the phone. He picked it up again. He did not watch the footage in real time. He downloaded it first, saved it to the encrypted drive he kept in the inner pocket of his work jacket, and only then played it back on his laptop with the volume low. His hands did not shake. The footage was 53 minutes long. He watched 4 minutes of it, confirmed what it was, and closed the file with the same economy he brought to every decision. The man in the footage was named Derek Saunders. Marcus knew this not because of anything he had suspected or tracked, but because Derek Saunders had been inside the Callaway Park townhouse twice before. Once to help Donna hang curtains in October, once for a dinner party in January, at which Marcus had shaken his hand and found him pleasant in the forgettable way of men who have nothing to prove because they believe they have already proved it. He worked in commercial real estate. He drove a silver Audi. He had a way of standing in a room with his hands in his front pockets that suggested he considered himself the most relaxed person in it. Marcus pulled the joint bank account statements for the past 16 months. He did not have to look hard. The pattern was there, the way patterns always are, once you stop assuming you're looking at coincidence. 47 individual transfers, ranging from $210 to $1,800. Groceries. She had told him on the 3 occasions he had asked about specific withdrawals. A new laptop. A bridesmaid gift. Car registration. He opened a spreadsheet and built the timeline in 40 minutes. $34,400 over 16 months. He went back further. 18 months back from that. Smaller amounts, less frequent, but the same destination account, the personal savings account Donna had opened in 2021, the one she had described as her emergency fund, the one he had agreed to without filing it anywhere in his mind as significant. 2 years and 2 months. $51,700. He sat with that number the way a structural engineer sits with a load calculation. Not with emotion, with attention. He thought about the conversation they had had in March, the one where Donna had suggested they put the townhouse on the market and use the equity to buy something larger in a neighborhood she preferred. Somewhere more visible, she had said, using that word without seeming to notice what it revealed. He had agreed to call a realtor. He had not called a realtor. He had forgotten, or let himself forget, and she had not pressed it. He understood now why she had not pressed it. His other phone, the one he kept in the inner pocket of his work jacket, the number registered to Ellison Okafor's corporate account, had 3 missed calls from Gerald. He called back. You seeing what I'm seeing? Gerald said, without preamble. Seeing it, Marcus said. What do you want to do? Marcus looked at the spreadsheet. He looked at the encrypted drive. He looked at the photograph of his grandmother that his brother had collected from the parking lot and propped against the wall of the garage apartment, the glass cracked in one clean line across the lower left corner. Call Patricia, he said. Tell her we need a Saturday morning. He opened a new folder on his laptop. He named it simply, Foundation. Patricia Horn had been a family law and asset protection attorney in Charlotte for 22 years. She operated out of a suite of offices on South Tryon Street with 3 associates. A paralegal named Leon, who had the demeanor of a man who had heard every human story and been surprised by none of them, and a particular reputation in the local legal community for the quality of her documentation. She was 56 years old, wore her hair natural and close-cropped, and had the kind of stillness in a room that made other people speak more carefully. She reviewed the folder Marcus brought her on Saturday morning without changing her expression. She reviewed the bank transfer timeline. She reviewed the footage log, the metadata, the timestamps. She reviewed the property deed, the original from 2017 in Marcus Ellison's name alone, the one Donna had been listed on as cohabitant, but not co-owner. The distinction they had discussed once, and that Marcus had explained in terms she had accepted without investigating further. She reviewed the contractor's license, the L's operating agreement, the portfolio summary Gerald had printed the previous night. She set the portfolio summary down last and looked at Marcus across the conference table. You understand, she said, that she has no claim on any of this. I know. The joint account is the exposure. What she took from the joint account. Patricia tapped the transfer summary. We can argue dissipation of marital assets. Given the pattern and the timeline, that argument is straightforward. I want it recovered. All of it. Plus the legal fees, if we push. She paused. There's also the question of Derek Saunders. Marcus waited. He's listed as a signatory on 2 of these transfers. She moved money to his business account on 3 occasions. Patricia slid a highlighted page across the table. That crosses from marital dissipation into potentially fraudulent transfer, which means it's not just a divorce matter. Marcus looked at the highlighted page. Gerald had the same thought. Gerald is correct. She folded her hands. Marcus, I need you to understand something. You have built a very solid case. But the strongest part of it isn't the money. The strongest part is that she is about to file for divorce believing she is leaving a handyman with a joint account. She has no idea what she is actually walking into. She said it without pleasure, just as a fact. Marcus nodded once. How long do we need? 2 weeks to prepare the full documentation. 1 week to file preemptively. She looked at him the way his grandmother used to look at him when he had done something that required patience rather than praise. Can you hold your face together for 3 weeks? I've been holding my face together for 2 years, Marcus said. Patricia allowed herself a small, quiet smile. Then we're going to be fine. His Uncle Ray lived in a brick house on the east side of Charlotte that he had owned since 1979. The yard was immaculate. The hedge along the front walk was cut with the precision of a man who believed disorder was a choice. Marcus came by Sunday afternoon with a bag of food from the spot on Beatty's Ford that Ray had liked since before Marcus was born. They ate at the kitchen table. Ray did not ask why Marcus had come. He listened while Marcus talked, eating steadily, nodding at the parts that required nodding. When Marcus finished, Ray was quiet for a moment. How long have you known? He asked. Fully? Since Thursday. In some part of myself I didn't look at directly. Marcus paused. Longer. Ray nodded. He picked up his fork, put it down again. You know what your grandmother would say. I know. She would say that a person who spends years building a life is not the same as a person who spends years appearing to build one. Ray looked at his nephew. You built it, Marcus. Every board. She was living in your construction while calling it her home. He paused. That's not a marriage. That was a residency. Marcus looked at the table. Outside, a lawnmower started somewhere down the street. There's one more thing, Ray said. He stood and went to the pantry, returned with a manila envelope, and set it on the table between them. Your grandmother left this with me. In 2019, she said if anything happened between you and that woman, I should wait until you came to me, not give it to you before. Marcus opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter in his grandmother's careful, looping script, and behind it, a document from a Gastonia notary dated November 2018. 3 pages. His grandmother's signature at the bottom of each. He read it twice. The property on Elm Hill Road in Gastonia, the one he had grown up spending summers in, transferred into a trust in his name alone in November 2018, with a specific notation in his grandmother's handwriting in the margin, for Marcus when he needs a place that is only his. She had known, or suspected, or simply loved him well enough to prepare for both. Real power, Marcus thought, operated in quiet rooms. It always had. She told me once, Ray said, that she never trusted a woman who made her grandson smaller in the retelling. He looked at Marcus steadily. You were never small, son. Don't let anybody's story of you be the one you carry out of this. The next 12 days passed the way work passes when you are focused, not quickly, but purposefully. Marcus went home on Sunday evening, the day after he saw Patricia. He let himself in with his key. He set his jacket on the hook by the door. He found Donna in the living room watching television, and he sat beside her and asked about her week, and she told him about a conflict at her job and a lunch she had enjoyed with a coworker and a dress she was thinking of buying, and he listened to all of it with the same attentiveness he had offered her for 11 years, steady and complete, and without performance. She leaned her head briefly against his shoulder before bed. He did not move away. He was not angry. He was clear. Those were different things, and he had known the difference since he was young enough to learn it. By the following Wednesday, Patricia had filed a preemptive asset protection motion in Mecklenburg County Superior Court, freezing the joint account and flagging the transfer pattern for judicial review. The filing was quiet. These things were, at first. But it was in the record. By Thursday, Gerald had pulled Derek Saunders' commercial real estate license history and found, with the help of a forensic accountant named Bev, who charged appropriately for her precision, a pattern of what could charitably be called client fund irregularities dating back to 2020. Bev used less charitable language in her written summary. The summary was 9 pages. By Friday, the Elm Hill Road property had been formally entered into the trust documentation Patricia's office had prepared. And by Saturday morning, Marcus had arranged for 6 vehicles from Ellison Okafor's commercial fleet, black SUVs, the ones they used for site superintendent transport on their larger builds, to meet him at 9 a.m. in the parking lot of the Callaway Park townhome complex. He had called ahead. Everyone he needed was already there, or already en route. Donna was on the balcony with her coffee when the first SUV turned into the lot. She watched with mild curiosity, the way you watch something unfamiliar that you assume has nothing to do with you. Then the second one. Then the third. By the 4th, she had set down her cup. By the 6th, she had her phone in her hand, though she had not yet decided who to call. Marcus came up the stairs alone. She met him at the door. She had the look of someone who had rehearsed this conversation and found, at the moment of performance, that the stage was different from the one she had prepared for. "Marcus," she said, "I think we need to talk." "We do," he said. Inside would be better. The living room was already occupied. Patricia Horn sat on the couch with a leather portfolio across her knees. Beside her sat Leon, the paralegal, with a second folder. Gerald Okafor stood near the kitchen entrance, his arms folded, his expression that of a man attending to a professional obligation and nothing more. Standing near the window was Donna's mother. Donna stopped. "Mama, what are you?" "Sit down, Donna," her mother said. She said it the way women of a certain generation say things that are not requests. Donna sat. Patricia opened the portfolio. She did not rush. She laid out the transfer summary first. 16 months on one sheet, 18 months prior on the next. The amounts, the dates, the destination account. She laid out the motion, already filed with the court. She laid out Bev's forensic summary of Derek Saunders' license history, with 3 specific entries highlighted in yellow. Then, Patricia laid down the property deed. Donna looked at it. "That's, the townhouse is both of ours. The townhouse has always been solely on Marcus's name," Patricia said, with the calm of someone who has said a version of this sentence many times. "You are listed as a cohabitant. The distinction was explained to you at signing. The distinction is documented." Donna looked at Marcus. He was standing near the hallway entrance with his hands in his pockets, and his expression was the same expression he wore when he was reading a site plan. Focused, measured, waiting for nothing that wasn't already in front of him. "Marcus," she said, a different tone now. Softer, 11 years. "We can talk about this, I don't need to talk about it," he said. "I need you to understand it. That's different." Gerald set a second document on the coffee table. The LLC operating agreement. The portfolio summary. A single-page summary of Ellison Okafor's last 3 years of revenue, prepared by their accountant and certified. Donna read the top line of the summary. She read it again. "He has been for the past 7 years," Patricia said, "one half of a development company that has completed 41 projects in the greater Charlotte metro and currently holds contracts valued at approximately $14 million in active construction." She said it without emphasis, the way you read a measurement. Derek Saunders, who you moved $11,400 of joint marital funds to over 6 separate transfers, is currently the subject of a North Carolina Real Estate Commission inquiry and has 2 civil judgments pending in Mecklenburg County. His license is under administrative review. Donna looked toward the window. Her mother had not moved from her position by the glass. "Mama," Donna said. "I told you," her mother said. "Before you even married him, I told you." Her voice was not loud. "I told you that man was not what you were looking at. You didn't want to see it." She was quiet for a moment. "I have known Marcus Ellison for 11 years, and he has never once made my daughter smaller. Which is more than I can say for the decisions my daughter has made for herself." She looked at her daughter steadily. "I will not stand on the other side of this." Donna's last attempt came in the form of tears. They were real. Marcus could tell the difference, after 11 years, between her real tears and her performed ones. These were real. They did not change anything. Patricia gathered her documents. Gerald straightened his jacket. Leon closed his folder. Marcus crossed to the coffee table and picked up the framed photograph of his grandmother, the one he had collected from the parking lot and had the glass replaced on the previous Monday. He looked at it briefly. He put it under his arm. He turned toward the door. "I built this place," he said. He said it quietly, not to wound, but because it was accurate, and he had always preferred accuracy. The deck, the kitchen, the tile, and the bath. I built it for a life I was trying to make real. He paused at the door. You don't get to throw the builder off his own building, Donna. That's not how structures work. He walked out. He did not look back. The room was silent behind him. In the parking lot, the morning light was clean, and the SUVs sat in a quiet row. And Gerald was already on his phone talking about Tuesday's site inspection. And Marcus put his grandmother's photograph on the back seat and sat in the driver's seat for a moment, and breathed, and thought about foundations, and drove. 9 months passed like water through a finished drain, smoothly, without resistance. The Elm Hill Roadhouse in Gastonia took Marcus 11 weekends to restore. He had done most of the work himself, which was the point. He had replaced the porch boards first because that was what needed doing, then the bathroom fixtures, then the kitchen, which he gutted and rebuilt in a style that his grandmother would have recognized and approved of. Clean, functional, nothing performed for anyone else's admiration. He planted a Japanese maple in the backyard in October. By spring it had taken to the soil with the quiet confidence of something that had decided to stay. He met Celeste through Gerald, which was how he met most good things, indirectly, through a person who did not make a production of the introduction. She was a structural engineer at a firm in uptown Charlotte who had worked on 2 of Ellison Okafor's commercial projects without their paths crossing until a site visit in November, when she had pointed out a drainage issue in a parking deck that 3 other engineers had missed. He had invited her to lunch to say thank you. She had asked 2 questions during that lunch that he was still thinking about a week later. She did not perform for him. She did not adjust her vocabulary or her posture for the room. When he told her, on their 4th dinner, the broad outline of what the previous year had held, she had listened with the kind of focused attention that told him she was thinking about what he was saying rather than deciding how to respond to it. She had asked one question. It was the right question. He had answered it honestly. She was good company. He thought that might be the most important thing. As for Donna, he heard through her cousin, who still occasionally called his brother, that she had moved to a 2-bedroom apartment in a suburb east of the city. She was working in office administration at a medical billing company. Derek Saunders had surrendered his real estate license in February as part of a consent agreement and relocated to Columbia. The civil judgments against him had been settled at a significant loss. The friends who had occupied the louder edges of Donna's social life had, as social networks tend to do in the absence of a townhouse and a public identity, dispersed. Her mother still called Marcus on his birthday. He did not gloat about any of this. He had no use for it. Bitterness required ongoing emotional investment in people who no longer deserved it. And Marcus Ellison had never had patience for investments with no return. On a Sunday morning in late April, he sat on the new porch boards of the Elm Hill Roadhouse with a cup of coffee and Celeste beside him, reading something on her phone. And the Japanese maple was small, but settled in its place. And the morning was the particular quality of morning that happens in late April in North Carolina, when the temperature is finally committed to warm and the air asks, "Nothing of you." He thought about his grandmother in her lavender hat. He thought about what she had told him about foundations. He was free. He was solvent. He was unbothered. Some things, he knew, were worth the patience to build right. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.